In the letter of James, chapter 1, we read that if any one of you lacks wisdom, let them ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to them. But they must ask in faith without doubting. For the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. So, what do we do when we lack wisdom for something? When we don't know the answer to something? When we're in a situation and we're stuck? Well, it seems obvious that we would ask God, right? But I think it's not so apparent that that's what we would do. I think that human tendency is to think, I've got this, I can figure it out for myself. Or maybe we blame ourselves for a situation like, well, I'm in this conflict, but really I'm to blame for it anyway. So why would I think to ask God? I just got to get myself out of this problem. I got myself into it. I think, again, God is telling us that He is there for us. He wants to give us wisdom when we don't have it. And I think the first step in getting wisdom is to admit that we don't know everything. And so asking is a step in humility, which God really likes. God likes that we ask when we don't know something, because that shows our dependence on Him, our need of Him. And every day we need God's help. Every day we need wisdom for big things, but also for little things. So we could think, well, it makes sense that we'd ask God for the big things, like, should I move here? Should I take that job? Should I go to this school? Should I marry that person? But what about the little things? Like the other day, I suddenly realized that my stove wasn't working, and this has never happened, ever. So immediately I thought, oh, well, it's probably a breaker. So I went over to the breaker box and I found the label that says stove, and I flipped it and nothing happened. So I thought, well, okay, maybe it's not a breaker. What could it be? I'll Google it. That's, I think, the first thing that comes to mind these days for most of us is Google it. Find it on YouTube. And I think the last thing that many of us do, well, at least I speak for myself, is go to God for something like a stove that doesn't work. We want to find a logical reason, which is not bad to do, but when we've exhausted all of our ideas, which I did, maybe it's a good idea to ask God. So I was thinking, what should I do? Okay, I really don't want to Google this. I don't want to have to take apart the stove. And I don't want to call somebody over because it's too expensive. And besides, what if I got COVID-19 from them? So in desperation, I'm sad to admit that I was feeling desperate for God, but that's often when we actually humble ourselves. I just put my hand up on the stove and I said, God, help me. I really need your help. I need this stove to work. And so show me what I need to do. And immediately the thought came back to my mind, breaker, go check the breakers. And I thought, but I already did. So I checked all the breakers on the side that was labeled stove. So everything on the right side, there was probably like 10 breakers. I flipped them all and nothing happened. So then I thought, okay, well, this makes no sense. Why do I seem to be drawn to the breakers? And especially to the one on the left, which was labeled main. So like the main breaker to the whole house. I thought this can't be right, but I thought whatever, I'll just check it out. So I flipped that breaker, the main breaker to the whole house apparently, and bam, the power went on just like that. And I was just like completely stunned. I thought, why would it be the main breaker to the whole house that's affected this stove? Well, I realized that the labeling was completely off because I started checking other breakers and realized that they didn't correspond to the right appliances and stuff. So I was just trusting that the labels were right. And that's often what we do, is we trust logic. So I was trusting the logic of the labeling of the breaker system there in the breaker box, rather than trusting that God actually knew better than I did. So I encourage you that when you want to lean on your own understanding, why don't you just trust that God gives generously, even when it's a minor thing. And also trust God with the big things. You know, maybe you don't think that God would care to give you wisdom for something that is your fault, something that you got yourself into in the first place, like a conflict. But I've been testing this out lately. God really does want to help us out, you know, even when we messed up, even when we don't feel like we deserve wisdom. Because if we just come to Him in humility, He's our Father, and He knows that we don't know everything, and He knows that we mess up every day too. So why not just come to Him today with whatever's on your heart, whatever your need is, whether it's a computer problem or whatever, and God might surprise you with the way He helps you out. Maybe He'll bring the right person there for you, or maybe He'll just like drop something into your head, or maybe He'll direct you to Scripture. In any case, taste and see that the Lord is good, and just don't distrust your heart. Let me just read this one more time. If anyone lacks wisdom, let them ask of God, who gives to all generously. But don't doubt. Ask in faith without doubting. So try it out. Have a good day.